All right, guys, so I had a minute here to shoot another video. This is probably not going to be very long, but I kind of want to go over what my favorite knives in my carry rotation are at the moment. And these are all users. Some of them get used a little harder than others, but they're all pretty much user knives. And I guess the common theme here with these knives is going to be carbon steel. I've really gotten away from anything stainless. I might buy a stainless knife, like I said in another video. I might buy a stainless steel knife, you know, if it's just like out at a flea market or an antique store and it's just like a smoking deal that I can't pass up, you know, I might buy something like that. But as far as like a knife to carry and use every day, I've pretty well honed it down to carbon. So along with just showing y'all my EDC knives, the ones that I carry and use, I thought I would also kind of talk about kind of how a slip joint's put together a little bit. You know, I know most everybody knows how a slip joint is constructed, but I was kind of wondering if a lot of people understood exactly what about the construction and how it's put together actually affects the walk and talk and the action of the blades. Now some of these, a lot of these have been modified, and just about everything on the table has half stops. Either it came factory that way or I added it. And we might talk about that a little bit too, because I always get questions. How do you do that? How do you do that? And it's really pretty simple. I've got a video where I talk about it, but I might go over that again. But I'll start by showing y'all this 75 that I've kind of been showing in each video. This thing is just really kind of turning into a nice carry. If you'll remember, or if you've seen the other videos I've made on this one, I kind of decided to not put this in a slip or even a belt sheath. I kind of just decided to carry this thing in my pocket, naked, if you will, just kind of like Grandpa did. And so I've kind of made a point to keep some change in my pocket, in my Zippo, you know, car keys or what have you, and just throw this thing in there amongst it and let it kind of get that, you know, that real world pocket wear. And so that's what I've been doing. And I don't know if you'll be able to tell, but you can kind of see it's getting dark. It's got the edges are wearing down. You can see on the patina of the blade where the blades stick up out of the knife. It keeps it kind of shiny where it's just been, you know, moving around in my pocket or whatever. But like I said, this thing's got the half stops that I added. I didn't even try to clean this knife or oil it or anything for this video. So the reason, you know, this thing actually has phenomenal action, but it's probably not going to sound like it has that great snap because it's just kind of dirty. But you know, that's just how it is when you carry one in your pocket and use it a lot. But if you'll notice, I did a little clip point mod to the spay blade, and I have really enjoyed that. It kind of makes me want to go back and do all my spay blades that way. I've actually realized this is very useful. I don't know if it's any more useful than the clip blade that it already comes with, but you can kind of get in here with this point and do a little digging, maybe pick a splinter out of your finger, something like that. You know, I never considered myself a spay blade hater. I do agree with some of the guys that a spay blade is not necessarily a good looking blade. You know, I don't think it's necessarily attractive as well. I mean, as much as a clip point or a sheep's foot is. But I do enjoy that clip point mod. And then here you go. Here's the factory sheep's foot, and you can see all these blades have some patina, mostly from food or sauce or what have you. But yeah, this one, y'all may be getting tired of seeing this one. I probably shouldn't open every video with it because a lot of y'all may be clicking on here and going, oh, it's that damn Amber Bone 75 again, and clicking off, you know. But Anyway, so this has been one I've been carrying. I think I've only left this thing at home one day since I acquired it. Probably close to 2 months ago. I've carried this thing every day except for maybe one. And the reason that I left it at home that day is because at its place, I brought along a Chestnut 75. Now this Chestnut was my everyday go-to knife for a long time before I had the Amber Bone. And if you'll notice, you know, Chestnut, Amber Bone, two very classic case colors. This one here's also kind of dirty. I didn't take any time to clean these up or oil them, so you may not get any crazy walk and talk sounds out of these knives in this video. But this one here, if you'll notice, I did kind of do some mods to it before I really started messing with these other trappers and stuff a lot. Sort of added a little swedge to the clip point. On the back side, I did a little bit all the way across this clip. And then on the spay blade, I did a little, swedge. My word left me. I did some swedging on this blade here. And also did swedging on the sheep's foot. So that was kind of the modification that I did to this knife along with half stops. I guess it might seem silly to some people, but I just kind of like to do these things. It kind of makes the knife more personal. You know, you might go to trade a knife like this and then you'll say, no, I can't get rid of that knife. I put those swedges on it and it's kind of mine. So I'm just going to keep it and hold on to it. So it's kind of like a little bit of insurance for hanging on to your knives maybe. But yeah, another 75. I think most everybody likes a 75. I know a few guys don't, but I think the majority of men that actually use a knife, they probably like the size and the abilities that a 75 offers. But yeah, these two are both constructed pretty well, and they both have really nice bone handles. So another knife that I've been carrying a lot is this dark red carbon steel trapper that I got from Big Fish 73. Just an awesome knife. Obviously I did half stops to this one as well. This knife here actually has a pretty phenomenal action. This knife just had, you know, strong springs, and so when you add the half stop to it, the half stop seems like it really just kind of accentuates the springs in one. But I'll show you the action here. Good positive click in the half, good positive click in the close. I modified this spay blade into more of a Wharncliffe, and I find that to be, you know, really, you know, useful. You got that, you know, just a real hypodermic point. Like I said, these are all carbon steel. They're either carbon steel or chrome vanadium, but yeah, the action on this blade's phenomenal. Just real, this one really turned out nice. And I've got to where I just prefer my trappers with either a sheep's foot style blade or a Wharncliffe blade. Now, I think the reason I started to do that or get that idea is because I bought a what Case calls an improved trapper, and instead of having a spay blade, it has a full-length Wharncliffe. Well, when you modify the spay blade, you obviously can't keep it full length because you've got that upturn at the end. You have to cut that off in order to get the straight edge. And so you can get a pretty long warney, but you're not going to get one that's quite as long. So you wind up with this situation here, but it's really no big deal because a Copperhead is going to be set up the same way with the clip point and the pin blade. And as a matter of fact, on a Copperhead, your pin blade's not going to be even nearly this long. So this is a pretty good setup right here, I think. But again, put together very well. All you Case haters out there, all you dudes that think Case are just a bunch of overpriced, good enough stuff, you know, hey, you're not going to beat a knife like this. You're especially not going to beat it with no damn Rough Rider. I don't care what anybody says. So to go along with that one, another carry knife I have and enjoy is a Copperhead. And no modifications here. The Copperheads come with the half stops, as most of you know. So we got a nice carbon clip on this Copperhead. And then factory half stops, like I mentioned. And then you've got your standard factory pin blade. And so yeah, pretty good configuration here. There's pretty much nothing you can't get done with a knife like this. I think a lot of people really like the Copperhead, maybe more than even a Trapper or some of these other models, but patterns. But yeah, a lot of people like the Copperhead, and this is a really nice one. This one I got in a trade with Big J, and I really enjoy it. Now, I've got the Copperlock, full-size Copperlock in this same family. But I had a freak accident, and the back spring broke, and so it's being sent off for repair. Now it's the time where somebody says, I've never had a Rough Rider spring break. Yeah, whatever. Anyway, another one that I like to carry be this Whiskey Bone Trapper. I recently, now this Whiskey Bone Trapper was already modified pretty much like the red one. I had left the clip point alone, obviously, and I had reprofiled the spay blade into a Warncliffe. Well, after looking at it for, I don't know, a year, several months, or a year, I kind of realized, like, I think I'd rather have this thing shaped more like a sheep's foot. And so that was just as easy as taking it to work and slowly, you know, I say slowly, you don't want to build up a lot of heat on a blade when you're doing a modification. If you're going to grind it or cut it with a cut-off wheel, you want to keep some water right there handy. Grind a little bit, cut a little bit in the water, keep it cold. Grind a little bit, cut, whatever you're doing, cool it off. If you never let it get that hot, then you're not going to mess your heat treat up. But if you sit and grind and grind and grind and grind and turn this thing glowing red, you're going to mess your heat treat up. So you want to be fast, and you want to keep these things cool. But this one has great action as well. You hear that? That's just got a really good walk and talk, and it's got the same walk and talk on the clip point. But this would be a good time to stop and explain what I meant by how the construction of a slip joint has a lot of bearing on the blade action. Now, a lot of guys get up in the air about blade play. And when you're talking about blade play, typically it's side-to-side blade play where you can take the blade of your knife and work it up and down, and you can feel it going back and forth inside the pivot. Now that's normally a condition where the knife was not pressed together tight enough. Now, the problem with that is you can take a nylon hammer, or you can take a piece of leather or wood or something, and you can bang this thing with a hammer and you can tighten it up. But the tolerance between what's too loose and what's too tight is just nothing. I mean, you can go from a little blade play to now all of a sudden I have no action whatsoever because I've got this thing pinched too tight. Once you get it pinched too tight, it's really hard to unpinch it, you know. And if you're one of those guys that can't stand blade play and you've ever tried to fix some blade play, I guarantee you've had that happen where you got that thing too dang tight, and now all of a sudden you have to close your knife all the way because it's too tight for the back spring to work the blade the way it's supposed to. So in my experience, I would rather have a slight bit of blade play rather than a pivot that's too tight and won't let the blade swing freely. You know what I'm saying? So this one here is good. It's got that real audible walk and talk. I don't have any blade play in this knife. There might be the slightest amount in the clip, but when I say the slightest amount, it's nothing you'd want to fool with trying to correct. And then the sheep's foot here, the spay blade mod, there's no blade play in it whatsoever. Now, another thing about a slip joint, most of your slip joints, and I'm not talking about Jack Wolfs and all that crap, Rosecrafts, they pretty much gone away from brass liners, and they incorporate the liner and the bolster into one piece of metal. Well, when you do that, you take a lot of the, what you would consider the handmade aspect out of the knife. A knife like this is composed of a bolster side here, obviously your bone cover, another bolster side, a brass liner, a back spring, a middle liner, another back spring, another liner, another bolster side. You know what I'm saying, okay? There's a lot of parts to this knife. Now, when you get ready to close these things up, you got to make sure all that stuff lays down flat. You don't want any piece of trash in there, or a liner or anything like that that's got a deviation or a bad spot, you know, and you want to press this thing up nice and smooth. Now, like I said, GEC gets this right just about 100% of the time, or at least the knives that they sell are put together perfectly. Case makes a lot more knives, they make them a lot faster, and some ugly knives get out the door. That's a fact. I cannot deny that, and I won't sit here and pretend like it doesn't happen. Case knives can, no doubt, be a shot in the dark. I've actually got to where I don't buy case knives unless I can look at the knife in person. I bought this knife at a hardware store. I was able to open it up, look at it, check the blades, check the walk and talk, the action. And I was even able to find one that had bone that I liked. You know, everything about it I was able to look at with my own eyes before I said, yeah, let me give you $80 for that knife. So, but now I did, you might say, slightly tweak this knife a little bit. If you'll notice, now this is concerning walk and talk, and I don't know if I'll be able to really show it, but do you notice the lines in the tang of this knife? You see those lines right there? Those lines are made when you close this knife, and the tang of this blade actually rubs against the liner. Now, brass, the reason that knife companies use brass is because brass is what you can call a self-lubricating metal. There's a reason that a lot of your machine bushings are made from brass. They're not made from aluminum or copper because those materials are soft and gummy, and they will gald in a very, you know, with just a little bit of heat and a little bit of dryness, they will gald and become gummy and sticky. Brass is one of those materials where when you're machining brass, you really don't even have to have any lubricant, because brass just cuts nice, and it doesn't, there's no gumminess to it. It's like a dry cut. When I'm at work, I love to cut brass, other than the fact that it kind of just goes everywhere. Something like aluminum or copper makes a big chip, and it'll sling the chip against the wall. Brass just pretty much flies through the air like glitter. But as far as the machining properties of brass, they're very, very good. It's easy to cut, and it cuts well. And like I said, it's a self-lubricating metal. So that's the reason you have brass liners. Brass against this carbon steel is never going to gald. It's never going to give you any trouble. You can never oil this knife one time, and it may not have the best action in the world, but it's not going to gald up and just get stuck to itself. But what I have done here is, where I noticed these lines on this tang, it's simply from where the two metals are rubbing each other. I took some sandpaper and I folded it up. I opened the blades up, and I took that sandpaper and I just sanded the inside of that liner. And I mean ever so slightly, just basically just fooling around, just with the sandpaper in and out, in and out, in and out. And I was able to get this thing to where I feel like all that rub is gone. And so I did it on all three blades. And what you actually have here is a situation where the clearance between the knife blade and the liners is just right there, where it's basically touching, but not, there's no pressure against each other, if that makes sense. So there's no resistance when these blades close, because they're sliding across that liner but there's no resistance to it, if that makes sense. So to put together a slip joint knife and get a really good action out of it is an art form in itself, because like I said, the difference in blade play and having a pivot that's too tight is just the tiniest little amount. It's just 1 minute you're loose, the next minute you're tied. You got to really be careful. So that's why, you know, you might get a knife from your grandpa that's got some blade play, and you're thinking, man, this thing has killer action, but golly, that blade's wobbly in there. Well, it's because over 50 years, maybe that's a lot, but maybe 10, 15, 20 years your grandpa carried his knife, he opened and closed it so many times that you got a little bit of wear, because I mean, brass will wear, but it's basically broken in good. And so yeah, that's what you got. That's kind of something I was thinking about. If you just really want to fine tune the action on a slip joint, you can go in there and file it or sand out some of that brass, just enough to where it gives that blade a little more slip. And what that's going to do is allow the pressure of the back spring to really work the blade the way you want it to, the way it was intended. So another knife here that I've been carrying a little bit is this Custom by Kent Smith. What this started out life as a yellow Delrin Warncliffe Copperlock that they have taken and recovered and actually turned into a bearhead. So this is like, as far as I know, this is an absolute one of one, because I've never seen another bearhead Copperlock, even a Custom, unless there's something out there that I just don't know about. But this is yellow dyed camel bone. It's almost, you could almost think of it as a little bit like an Appaloosa, the way the dye set up in the bone here. You got some light spots and some dark spots, but this is like I said, a chrome vanadium Warncliffe full-size Copperlock. And I'm noticing that I need to get some oil on this thing because I've got a little bit of surface rust right there, and that's not cool. But anyway, it's like I said, it's a working knife. It's a Custom, so I want to be careful with it. I would hate to drop it and chip this bone, because it's not something that I could easily repair or replace. But at the same time, when you've got something this cool, you kind of want to use it, right? But yeah, there we go. That's another user. My dark red Copperlock is also a carbon steel knife, but like I said, it's broke, so it's being sent off for repair. Another user here is another Chestnut Bone knife. This is a Chestnut Bone Sodbuster Junior. Like most Sodbusters, the dye's a little darker because you don't have the more aggressive hafting on either end where they blend it in with the bolster. You basically just have the same thickness of bone from one end to the other, so the dye tends to be a little darker because you don't have it sanded down on the ends. But I just love this thing. I love the color variation from the edges to the sides and everything. And I did half stops on this one as well. I kind of gone half stop crazy with everything. If I had a knife that didn't have a half stop, it pretty much does now. Now let's talk about the half stop real quick before I move on to the next knife, because I'm not going to drag this out too awful long. But the way I do a half stop, I don't really have the means here at home to bust this knife apart and then take just the blade itself and sand the tang flat. I don't really have the means to do all that efficiently. And you can bust the bone when you're taking them apart and putting them back together. That's not just it's not just something that's very easily done. You have to really take your time with it. But I basically just ever so gently come in here with a Dremel tool and a cutoff wheel, one of the small 1-inch cutoff discs. And I just go in there and I just work that tang. A knife either has a half stop blade, which has a flat bottom on the tang, or it has a round, what they call a cam tang. And if you want to turn a cam tang knife into a half stop knife, all you need to do is flatten out that half circle on the bottom. Now, I don't try to just flatten it out, because when you flatten it out, especially doing it this way, if you have the slightest bit of a high spot in the middle, then your half stop is not going to be positive. You're going to have a wobbly half stop. It's not going to be good and positive. So what I try to do is give it a little bit of a concave, okay? Now, if you've got it concaved and all the relief is in the middle of the tang and you've got a high spot on both sides, then when this thing goes into half stop, it's hitting over here on this side and it's hitting over here on this side. And those two high spots, those two outer edges, is going to be where this knife lands and rests on that back spring. And that's going to give you a good solid lockup, or, you know, half stop. So it's right there. It even gives it a better sound when you do it correctly. And there's no wobble. Like, I don't push this thing, and it's always going to come right back to the same spot. It's going to land on those two high spots. And that's what you're going to have. You're not going to have that mushy, y'all know what I'm talking about. You're going to have a knife that's got a half stop, but it's kind of mushy, and it kind of just wants to wobble back and forth a little bit. It's because that tang has a high spot in the middle, and it's kind of just sitting there and rocking back and forth like a boat. So you get in there, you're not going to be able to tell it, but you get in there and you make that a little bit of a concave with that round cutoff wheel, and that's going to give you the best half stop when you're doing it this way. All right, moving on. This is a kind of an honorable mention. This is one of my favorite patterns of any knife on the planet, and it's a case 31. I've actually, you know, like I showed in the last video, I've gathered up quite a little collection of these. I've got several. This one here is probably number 2 in my collection. I've got one that's in mint condition with perfect bone and perfect blades. And then this one pretty much has perfect blades. It just has this little blemish down here where the bone was chipped. It's not a big deal. It's been repaired and it is good to go. And I actually like this knife because of this little worm groove right here. Little groove down the side of this bone. Really gives it some character. But this one here, because it's not what you would consider mint condition, even though it's very nice, full blades, this is one I don't mind carrying because, like I say, it's not mint, but man, it's got some killer springs in it. It's just, a 31 is just a perfect size. I don't know what else to say about a Case Redbone 31. They're just pretty much perfect, I think. Little torpedo jack, whatever you want to call it. I just really, really like these. Another one here that I would be remiss if I didn't show you is the big folding hunter that I acquired. I showed y'all this one in my last video. I spoke really highly of it. I mean, this is just like, this is still holding probably the top spot in my entire knife collection. I just absolutely love it. It is just a freaking beast. I love Chestnut Bone. I love CV steel. And I just love the size of this thing. It's just absolutely perfect. Oh, I don't know what else to say. It's just perfect. It's been on my hip in this big old pancake sheath every day without fail. I carry it every single day. Doesn't matter, rain, shine, snow, heat wave, whatever. It's going to be on my hip. I've cut several steaks with it, several apples, banding material, boxes, rope, twine, zip ties, whatever needs to be cut. It's a breeze with this big guy. So I have stopped it as well, and yeah, it's just about perfect. So that's really all I've got. The only other thing I'd like to show y'all, excuse me, about to talk till my throat got dry. Here's I'm about to forget this too. I made this strop the other day out of an old belt and a piece of wood that I found laying in the dumpster at work. So yeah, this thing's about, I don't know, probably about a foot of 12 inches of leather belt here. This has some polishing compound kind of already loaded into it. I made me a little handle, just something a little bit easier to hold on to. And I actually intend on staining this. I've got some carbon gray stain that I want to try on this and see what that looks like. But I basically just epoxied the belt to the wood, and then I put some other wood on top of it to get a good flat contact on that while it was setting up. It turned out pretty good. I did a little YouTube short where I actually stropped up the hunter, and then I shaved a spot on my leg with it. And man, the hair was just jumping off of the legs, and that short has done incredibly well. It's got like 7,000 views, which I was kind of surprised by. But yeah, so that was a little strop I made I wanted to show. And the last thing here, y'all might remember this. This is a sort of like a camp knife that I made. I had the guys down at the laser shop cut me out some, I guess this is 3/16. It may be 1/4 inch. I think it might be 1/4 inch. I can't remember what I used, and I can't tell just by looking at it. But this is a stainless steel, just plate material that I had them cut a couple of rectangles out of. And this was the first shape that I came up with. Now, like I said, this is pretty thick. I'll never get a hair popping edge on a knife like this, but this knife here is designed in such a way that it would make a hell of a weapon. I mean, God, you could run this right through something, whether it be a dog or a bear or anything that might be after you, or another person, I guess, come in your house in the middle of the night. But I did, in fact, put these genuine stag handles on this thing, pinned them with brass pins, and it's also epoxied down, but put the brass pins in it. And I really like the shape. I like the way this thing came out. Like I said, I came up with this profile. This started out as just a rectangle piece of stainless. This is some good stainless too. I don't know exactly what it is, but it's good stainless. It's not like what a Rough Rider or a case is made out of. This is good stuff. Now I get this sharp, and it'll hold that edge pretty well. It's just a little bit thick. If it were thinner, I could have got a little bit keener edge on it. But the reason I'm showing y'all this is because I'm wanting to make a kind of a pair, a set. So I had another piece of the same stuff that I decided to make a cleaver blade out of. And so I've got it pretty well roughed down. I've got the edge about where I want it. I've got the profile where I want it. The only thing that's holding me back now is I need to find another piece of stag. I'd like to find something that will match this pretty well. And then this is going to be like my camp knife set. You're out camping, you got your bonfire or whatever, you're going to cook something. This is going to be my set of knives that I could use in the campsite, or just on the grill or whatever. I told a guy the other day, I said, it's not the most practical knife in the world because the blade is so thick. It'll never make like a proper kitchen knife. But could you imagine having these things at the barbecue grill on the 4th of July when everybody's standing around waiting on the ribs or the steak or whatever? That'd be pretty cool, I think. So all I gotta do now is find me a piece of stag or a couple pieces that I can handle this knife with, and I will punch the holes in it, and I will get some handles on this knife, and I think I'll have me a cool little set. So that's gonna wrap it up. And I hope y'all enjoyed it. Just had some things I want to talk about. And I appreciate y'all's time. Hit that like button, share it with your friends, tell your friends about it, and we'll keep trying to build the channel. And I'll catch y'all on the next one.